There we go. I was just making sure we had the
Okay,
recording.
perfect.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. First, I hope everyone's safe and healthy, and so are your families. This will be a little different today because most of my lectures are more discussion-based, and unfortunately, that won't really work too well here. So instead, what we'll do is we'll quickly cover some kind of big picture marketing ideas because I promised I'd make this academic. But then we will quickly then talk about the School of Business and the different majors that are in the School of Business. And then the most important part is the question and answers. And we'll do our best to get all the questions covered that you have. It could go over though. And at the same time, if you have any questions, you can always feel free to email me. My email is simply my last name, vanwinter@hood.edu. Especially working from home right now, I have a lot of time to respond to emails. It's kind of my #1 priority in life is keeping touch with my students and making sure they're okay. I see Caitlin Ambrosser's here. She's actually knows that I do respond to my email as best I can. So she has sent me a question or two after sitting in on one of my lectures once. So maybe what I'll do is, well, first I'll give you kind of quick my background, which I think kind of leads the way I teach, and several professors in our department have a similar background. And I came from the corporate world. I went to a small liberal arts school, which were the best years of my life, and they're still my best friends now. And then I went into the corporate world before I got my MBA, my PhD. Started in finance, and then I moved over into marketing. So I kind of a background in both. Started a smallish company, maybe 18, 20 employees as director of marketing, and then later became the president of that company. By the time I left, it had about 200 employees and a little over $100 million in net revenues, not profits, revenue. So, but to tell you the truth, I was looking for a change, and Hood College was exactly the kind of place I wanted to go to, and I've loved my time here. I think what's interesting too is that Ryan, who's co-hosting this with me, is not only works for the college, but he's also my former advisee and a business student. And I think it kind of shows what's different about a small school is that, I had Ryan in class when he was a first-year student, and I was like, okay, super nice guy, really funny, really strong student. And then I found out he was majoring in psychology, which is awesome. He had a passion for it, so I wasn't going to try to change his mind. But at the same time, I kind of like threw it out there that there was no reason why he couldn't minor in business and possibly even to a double major. Not too many students go the double major route. Ryan's really smart and are really crazy, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, probably.
But he went ahead and did the double major in psychology and business. But I think that's kind of the thing about Hood is it's so small that professors notice you and they're going to push you. Or at least make suggestions. It's so small that I think I see more students at lunch with questions in the dining hall than ever drop by my office to ask questions. So I think that's a good thing. But again, my background again is more corporate, which kind of just leads the way I teach, and that I typically will provide concepts, but then I'm more into application and how to really use it in the corporate world. So I think that's a real quick background. What I'll do is I'll put up some slides. We'll real quickly go through some major marketing concepts, and then we'll talk about the School of Business, and we will talk about the other related majors to it. So let me see if I can share those slides with you. So there we go. And I think the first thing, it has this title, The 4 Ps and Beyond, and there's a lot more to marketing than the 4 Ps. But the interesting thing I think about marketing in general, and here when we go to the first slide, is that a lot of people, when they think about marketing, all they really think about is the 1 P. And it's not even a P, but most people just think of advertising. I know when I took marketing in college, I thought it was going to be an awesome class because we were just going to watch commercials and talk about advertisements. And I thought when they turned the lights off to watch commercials, I could sleep. But that wasn't really it. We didn't even talk about advertising until like 3/4 of the way through the semester. So, over time I found out that there's a lot more to marketing. And I think that first definition, which I stole from someone and I added the word profitably myself, was it's much more about really seeing what needs are out there and then meeting those needs. Right. So marketing is not just about trying to sell what you have, but it's kind of like looking at, what needs does society have and how can we possibly, better meet those needs. And companies that have been really successful have seen a need before anyone else. So we'll still touch on the 4 Ps. If we were in a class together, I would show you the definition by the American Marketing Association. That's AMA is American Marketing. Easy to get mixed up with the American Medical, but their definition, hides the 4 Ps. And if we were together, I would have students identify those 4 Ps. But if you were to take a look at them now, you can kind of see where they're buried. And creating, go ahead, probably guess in your head, creating is actually the product, right? So that's kind of just sitting down saying, not just let's try to sell this product, but it's like what kind of product or service, right? Because often we're talking about service. And right now, some services such as online education and delivery services are critically important. So creating is thinking of the product ahead of time and then bringing it together. The next one is communicating, which is promotion. And again, which is our second P, with promotion, we're not just talking about selling, but we're actually creating awareness, right? And putting people's, kind of another word that a lot of people use is positioning. What do people think of when they think of you? What do they think of when they think of their company and your products? So it's not just selling at the end, but creating awareness so people even realize that there's this need out there that can be solved. And delivering, which I think delivering is a better word, but that's often called place, right? Like how and where are you going to sell this product? When I was your age, of course, it was, what stores are you going to sell things in? But now it's, more and more switching to online. And the last word is exchange. When you think of exchange, you can often think of money. So then we're thinking about price, but it's not always price, right? There's some things in life that, I'm trying to think, Facebook. You don't pay for Facebook with money, but you're paying by giving them your information, which they are then selling. So you're getting a service from Facebook, the ability to keep connected with friends and do other things, but you are paying something. So those are the 4 Ps. But like I said, there's a lot more to the 4 Ps, and we'll kind of get to that in a minute. So here, I just wanted to give one big picture of it, right? We always say the most important thing in the world, both for companies is the customer. And, just like at Hood College, most important thing is a student in the middle of the circle. For a corporation, the most important thing is the customer in the middle. So those are then surrounded by your 4 Ps, which you do have some control over. And then that's farther surrounded by, environmental forces, which sometimes you have a little control because you can do lobbying, you can push, make small changes in laws. But for the most part, you just have to react, right? I mean, right now, companies are reacting to forces that are, way beyond something they can control, but they are going to have to adapt or they're going to be in trouble. So like I said, 4 Ps and beyond, what's really much more important than just the 4 Ps is thinking about customers in the long term, right? Because it's one thing to have a customer, but if you're not building a long-term relationship with that customer, you're not going to do well as a company. And more people are realizing this, and it's becoming much more important to do too with the advent of social media, because if you don't treat people right, it's obviously going to come back with a much larger number. And I added this last night was, the 80-20 rule is something important to think about. And that is, that there's certain customers that's, really important that your relationship stays strong with, because not everyone spends the same amount of, money with your company. You think of a company like McDonald's, there's some people that will never go to McDonald's. It's just not their place. There's other people that go once in a while. They're traveling on a highway and they're like, oh, we only have a few minutes. Let's grab something to eat. But then you have some people that go to McDonald's every week, if not multiple times a week, right? So McDonald's, those people that are there every single week, it's important to them to keep them happy. And the next thing I want to talk about is customer retention, right? Studies have shown that it costs the first time there, 5 times more money to retain a customer than it does, to actually, get them to start with. So a lot of people spend all their effort trying to get new customers, and it's really more about trying to keep the people you're working with happy now. And if people could reduce, you just look down a little bit, if you can reduce the number of people that leave your company each year, then your profits are going to kind of exponentially increase. Again, it's kind of common sense, but then so much of what we teach in marketing and in management is that common sense is not that common. And, that if you take a minute to step back and figure out what's really important to us, and obviously treating your customers well in the long term should be very important to you, that and treating your employees, there's nothing much more important than that. So that was kind of just a quick overview of the 4 Ps and beyond. And I hope to have each in class where we'll talk about that for most of the semester. Like I said, my background, I was in marketing for, over 15 years. And most jobs in some way involve, marketing activities. Here says, I think that's probably a percentage of doing a lot of marketing, but everyone's a marketer to some degree, right? I mean, everyone that works at a company is representing their company, and every time they're out, dealing with anyone outside the company, that they're obviously representing their company. So in a way, I think everyone is marketing to some degree. So that was just a kind of a real quick, overview, but again, I don't want to chew up all the time. And now we're going to kind of quickly step into, the different majors. So I think the largest major at Hood College is the business administration degree, right? I think nursing is number 2, business administration is number 1. Within the business administration major, you can select a different concentration, and you can actually do 2 concentrations if you like. So you could do marketing and accounting. Social entrepreneurship is the latest one we added for those people that are interested in like kind of starting their own businesses and helping society at the same time. I put marketing at number 1 on the list because they always do it alphabetically, which marketing ends up second to last. But today we're number 1. So the other majors we have as well are accounting, which is a fantastic field. Every one of our accountants students gets great internships, and they all have job offers before they leave because there's just not enough accounting people to fill the roles. Economics, which is a awesome major for those that have strong technical abilities. A lot of those students go on to PhD programs. Integrated market communications, which is near and dear to my heart, because along with someone from the English and Communications department, I started that program a number of years ago. And last but not least is finance, which I probably shouldn't be talking about here because it's been approved by our department, and it's going to be moved for approval to the school in the fall. So it's going to be here fall of 2021 if things go as well as we think they're going to go. All right, Ryan, I kind of went through that quickly, but I now wanted to open this up to questions and answers.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys want to if anyone has any questions in the chat, feel free to ask. Hopefully we don't miss anybody, but if we do, or if you have questions that you'd rather share privately, you can do that in the chat. Just share it with either myself or Dr. Van Winter, or you can email us afterwards. That's totally fine as well. But yeah, let's open up the chat to if anyone has questions about the program or classes or anything like that. Yeah. Okay, so Tom asks if we have an MBA program. We do. I'm actually finishing it up this spring. So a lot of our students will pursue a dual degree program at Hood. So that's an option. If you want to talk about that, Dr. Van Winter, and how that kind of works for business students, you can probably lend.
Sure, I'd love to. And boy, am I glad you asked that question, because I think I was told to cover that information, but I don't do a great job with that. So yeah, so it's with any major at Hood College, it's possible to get a 5-year MBA degree. If let's say you're an English major, you just have to make sure you did certain classes as business classes as an undergrad, and then you could still do the 5-year MBA program. The nice thing for students that are going to be majoring in business as an undergrad student is that you're going to be taking all those prerequisite courses as a requirement for your major, so that if you decide to go into the MBA program, you will already have the prereqs done, and you'll be able to do a 5-year MBA program right off the start. Great question.
Yep. And then Darius asks if we can go into more detail about internship opportunities that are available.
Another great question, because I meant to cover that one as well. Yeah, I often get asked, mostly by parents, if their son or daughter will get a chance to do an internship. And my response is always, well, they won't have a choice.
They have to.
Right? It's built in. It's it's just like a regular class in the business program, in that every student's required to do an internship. And there's more companies, and I'm not just going to say companies, we'll say organizations, because there's also some nonprofits located in our area in DC that take our internship. So there's more organizations that want our interns than we have interns. So you'll definitely get an internship. It's just a matter, the stronger students that look ahead a little bit more might get the internship that is more coveted for them. And you don't have to do your internship here in Frederick. We've had students do their internships over the summer for professional teams or Under Armour and those kinds of companies.
And I can speak to having been a business student. A lot of the faculty in our department have really good connections from their professional careers as well. So even if a student's not going directly through our career center, a lot of times professors are able to offer internship opportunities that they've heard of through the grapevine of their colleagues and professional networks. So being at a small college like Hood, you're able to have those kind of personal connections with your advisors, and they're able to kind of give you those internship opportunities that you might not have gotten otherwise. Okay, so do you believe accounting classes can prepare you for a career in forensic accounting? That's a good question.
Yeah, that is a great question, and it's not totally within my field, but I'll just, we have 2 accounting professors, one of whom I've kind of talked about this. He believes it does. That the interesting thing is with accounting, especially if you're going to be a CPA, you need to take an additional, I think it's 30 credits beyond just your undergrad credits. Some people do it as an MBA program. Others will go on to take those credits in something like, at least some of those credits will be taken in forensic accounting. So, you have to do those credits to get your CPA. So you definitely have time to take additional classes and things like forensic accounting. But to me, it seems like a fascinating field.
And internship-wise, I think being able to have an opportunity in the forensic accounting field, especially with our proximity to DC and Baltimore, students have opportunities to use internships as leverage for getting their foot in the door with forensic accounting and things like that. And then the next question is about, I wanted to ask if international business is offered in some sort of the concentration combination, some kind of branch off international economics and finance, or what would that look like?
Okay. Another great question. International business is actually a course that's a requirement for every business student. So you will get, every student will get a touch of international business, but a student that wanted to have more of those types of courses would probably do the international economics and finance concentration. At Hood, you can also you can build your own concentrations, which a lot of students do. So if we looked around, we saw that, okay, well, there's, maybe a globalization course and some other things that you would like to take. We could actually build an international business concentration if there are other courses you thought would be a better fit for what you want to learn.
Yeah. Any prerequisite classes that are mandatory while being in the business program, such as algebra or statistics?
Good question. I would say not really just for the business program, but the Hood College does have what they call their core, which means everyone, they just want people to be well-rounded. So you will take one class and, well, you take your foreign language, and one of those core classes is a quantitative methods class, which is a math class. And for the business program, we require our students to select statistics, Math 112, which is a fairly easy statistics class. But that's the class that we require for our math. So you're going to have to take a math class. We just ask that you take statistics.
Okay, good questions so far. Anyone else have any others? We have a few more minutes if anyone has some last minute questions.
Well, this is timed out because we were supposed to end right about now.
I know.
And thank God the questions covered everything we missed.
Right. Well, I can speak to my experience coming from the business program that, you know, as a business student, you're going to get the opportunity to kind of make it what you want it to be. And I know from my experience, a lot of other of my classmates, a lot of them are doing, you know, double majors or a major and a minor to kind of get more specifically where they want to go with the business program. So something like international business, you know, students can do our global studies program with business and you know, minoring in global studies, or, you know, if they want to get into forensic accounting, doing some kind of minor with that, with like law and criminal justice or something like that, to make your business major, which can be broad, more focused in a specific area. For me, that's why I did business and psychology. I wanted to go more into marketing, and psychology helps you learn how people work. So being able to kind of combine majors and minors and concentrations all across the board, it is a lot easier through the business program and through, you know, the fact that Hood is the size that it is, and you're going to get that kind of attention. Because I had, you know, multiple advisors in my different departments that I was in. So everyone was kind of working together. You know, Dr. Van Winter was working with my psychology advisor to make sure I was getting classes that were going to count towards both requirements. And I think that in a program like business, where you are going to be taking classes in all different areas, so you're going to have a background in finance and accounting and marketing and all different areas within business, you're able to kind of see how flexible your business degree can be from Hood. And it definitely carries a lot of weight, especially in the area. Okay, so I'm going to I think I'm going to make you the host, Dr. Van Winter. I have to get going to the Hood Hello session. So if anyone wants to join group 1, I will be overseeing group 1 in the Hood Hello. Feel free to ask any last minute questions or anything like that to Dr. Van Winter. And then let me post the link here. So if anyone is going to head over to the Hood Hello session, if you want to fill out that survey in between, it'll only take you 1 minute max. So feel free to go fill that out. And then at that ASD page, you can head into any of the accepted student sessions. There are 3 for freshman students, and then there's 1 specifically for transfer students. So feel free to head into any of those. Thank you guys so much for being so cooperative and being so good with the chats and the questions and everything like that. And I will be heading out, but if you have any questions for Dr. Van Winter, feel free to let him know. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Ryan. Good luck.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, you're very welcome, Tyler and Tom. And thank you, everyone else, for sitting in. Hope you enjoy the rest of the program as much. But I am here in case any other questions pop up before you leave. But have an awesome day.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, I think we're all wrapped up and the other session's starting now. So thanks again. I really appreciate your time.